I need you to stop whatever you're doing and listen to me. Because what I'm about to tell you is the reason I don't sleep through the night anymore. It's the reason I keep my phone on full volume even when I'm completely exhausted. And it's the reason I will never ignore a phone call from someone I love no matter what time it is. My little brother called me at 11:47 p.m. On a Thursday night. I was in my apartment studying for a difficult nursing exam. I saw his name pop up on my screen and smiled softly because Theo always called me at random hours to tell me something funny or loudly complain about his awful roommate. I thought it was going to be one of those harmless calls. I answered, and my brother's face filled the screen, but he wasn't laughing. He wasn't smiling. His face was twisted in pure, uncontrollable terror. His hands were shaking so hard that camera kept blurring violently. Non-stop, he was driving on a dark, empty highway, and I could see nothing but endless blackness through his windows outside. He was screaming at me, "Shiloh, they're in the car with me. There's someone in the back seat." Right now, I can see them in the rearview mirror. Clearly, they've been there since the gas station. I told him to calm down slowly. I told him to pull over safely and turn on the light. I told him to show me the back seat so I could prove to him nothing was actually there. He flipped the camera around. The back seat was completely empty, just his backpack and a crumpled sweatshirt. Nothing else. No person, no figure, no shape, hiding in shadows. I told him he was tired. He had been driving for hours. His mind was playing cruel tricks on him. I told him to take a breath and focus back on road. He flipped the camera back to his face. His eyes went wide. He whispered, "Shiloh, they're reaching out for me." Then I saw something that will haunt me for the rest of my entire life. Forever, a hand came out of the darkness behind my brother suddenly. It wrapped tightly around his throat without warning. Theo screamed. The phone flew out of his grip. I saw a blur of motion briefly, the ceiling of his car, a flash of the dark highway outside rushing past. I heard choking sounds, gasping, my brother fighting desperately for his life. Then the call went completely dead. Before I go any further, I need you to drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button right now because this story only gets more intense from here. My name is Shiloh Mercer. I'm 23 years old and I'm a nursing student in Columbus, Ohio. My little brother Theo is 19 asterisk. He's a freshman enrolled at a small college in rural Pennsylvania, about 3 hours away from where I live. He's studying computer science. He's smart and funny, kind and thoughtful. He's also the most important person in my entire world. When that call finally ended, I didn't know if my brother was still alive or dead. I didn't know who had been hiding inside his car or what exactly they wanted. All I knew was that I had just watched someone grab my brother from behind, and I was 3 hours away with no way to actually help him. This is the story of the longest night of my life, the night I drove into darkness just to save my little brother, and what I discovered when I finally reached him. To understand why I reacted the way I did that terrifying night, you need to understand my relationship with Theo. He's not just my brother, he's also the person I raised. Our parents divorced when I was 15 years old and Theo was 11. Our dad moved across the country immediately after the papers were signed. He said he needed a fresh start. What he really meant was he needed to escape the mess he himself helped create. We heard from him on birthdays and holidays for about 2 years, and then the calls stopped coming altogether. I haven't spoken to my father in over 5 years. Our mom didn't handle the divorce well. She sank into deep depression that swallowed her entirely for almost 2 years. She barely got out of bed. She stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, stopped going to work until she eventually lost her job. Some days she didn't even speak. She would just lie on the couch staring at the television with empty eyes. I was 15 years old and suddenly I was responsible for everything. I made sure Theo ate breakfast before school. I helped him with homework at night. I signed permission slips, packed lunches, and made sure he had clean clothes to wear. I attended his parent-teacher conferences because our mom couldn't get off the couch. I held him when he cried about dad leaving. Told him everything would be okay, even when I wasn't sure it would be. I became his mother, father, and sister all at once. I was just a kid myself, but I didn't have a choice. Theo needed someone, and I was the only one left. Our mom eventually got better. She started therapy, went on medication, and slowly began functioning again. By the time I graduated high school, she was back to work and mostly herself. But those 2 years changed something between me and Theo. We weren't just siblings anymore. We were survivors. We had been through something together that bonded us in a way most people don't ever really understand. When Theo got accepted to college in Pennsylvania, I was so incredibly proud of him. He earned a scholarship for his grades, and the school had a great computer science program. But I was also terrified he would be 3 hours away. I wouldn't be able to check on him every single day. I wouldn't be there if anything went wrong. He promised to call me twice. Every week, he always kept that promise asterisk every Tuesday and Saturday night. My phone would light up with his face, and we would talk for an hour about everything and absolutely nothing. His annoying roommate who played video games until 3 o'clock a day. And every night, the girl in his statistics class who he was too shy to talk to at all. The dining hall food that was somehow both overcooked and undercooked simultaneously. Those calls were my lifeline to him, truly. They were how I knew he was okay. That Thursday night started like any other night. I was in my apartment in Columbus, sitting at my desk alone, surrounded by textbooks and scattered notes everywhere. I had a big exam the next morning, and I had been studying for hours without stopping. My roommate Darcy had gone to bed around 10 o'clock that night. The apartment was quiet except for the scratching of my pen and the occasional car passing outside. I was completely exhausted. My eyes were burning from staring at notes for far too long. I was about to give up and sleep when my phone lit up on the desk. Theo's face appeared on the screen with words FaceTime audio beneath it. I smiled softly. It was a Thursday, not our usual call night. He probably had something funny to tell me, maybe. His roommate did something ridiculous again, or maybe he finally talked to the girl from statistics class at last. I picked up the phone and answered quickly. The smile died on my face instantly. When I saw him, Theo's eyes were wild with pure fear. His face was pale and sweaty. The camera was shaking because his entire body was trembling uncontrollably behind him through the car windows. I could see nothing but endless darkness. No streetlights, no other cars, just an empty highway stretching endlessly into nowhere. He wasn't calling to tell me something funny at all. He was calling because he was terrified. And whatever was scaring him was in that car with him. I had no idea that in the next few minutes I would watch something attack my brother violently. I had no idea that his phone would go dead suddenly and I wouldn't reach him. I had no idea that I would spend the next 3 hours driving through the night not knowing if he was alive or dead. All I knew in that moment was simply that my little brother needed me desperately, and I was 3 hours away. Theo's voice was high and panicked, sounding the way it used to sound when he was a little kid having a nightmare. But this wasn't a nightmare. This was completely real. He was gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had turned white and his eyes kept darting to the rear view mirror like something was behind him that he couldn't stop looking at. He told me what happened about 20 minutes earlier. He had stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. It was one of those small, rundown places with flickering lights and only 2 pumps working. He needed gas and a coffee to stay awake for the rest of the drive back campus. There was a van parked on the side of the road nearby with its headlights off. He noticed it because it felt strange, but he didn't think much of it. People park in weird places all the time. He filled up his tank, paid inside, grabbed a coffee, and got back on the highway. A few minutes later, he noticed headlights behind him. They stayed at the same distance for miles, never getting closer, never falling back, just following him. He told himself he was being paranoid. Lots of people drive highways at night. It didn't mean anything. Then the headlights suddenly completely disappeared ahead. He checked his mirrors, and the road behind him was completely dark. The other car was just gone, entirely vanished. He should have felt relieved right then. Instead, he felt more afraid because that's when he started seeing something strange in his rearview mirror. A shape appeared in his back seat. A dark figure sitting right behind him, silently. He told me he could see it there in the mirror, clearly, just sitting still, unmoving, but every time he turned around to look directly at the back seat, there was nothing there at all. He thought he was losing his mind completely. He thought the exhaustion from driving was making him hallucinate. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong, that he wasn't alone in that car anymore. That's why he called me, because I'm the person he always calls when something feels wrong. I hope you and your daughter are safe and happy now. You both deserve peace, Marcus. I read that letter 3 times, crying harder each time. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond because I didn't know what to say, but I also couldn't throw it away. It felt important somehow. Proof that Marcus was human, not a monster. Even though what he'd done was inexcusable, the whole experience changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'd always prided myself on being tough and independent, on not needing help from anyone, on being able to handle single motherhood without breaking down. But having Marcus in my house for weeks without realizing it shattered that self-image completely. I started therapy to process the violation and the fear. And my therapist helped me understand that my determination to prove I didn't need anyone after the divorce had actually made me more vulnerable. I'd been so focused on appearing strong that I'd ignored every instinct telling me something was wrong. I also started volunteering with a homeless outreach program in Portland, working specifically with their mental health crisis team. I couldn't help Marcus directly, but I could help people like him before they got desperate enough to break into someone's attic. I learned about the gaps in our mental health system, about how people fall through crack after crack until they end up on the streets with nowhere to turn. It didn't excuse what Marcus did, but it helped me understand the context of his choices. Harper recovered faster than I did, the way children often do. After a few months of therapy and consistent routines, she stopped talking about the quiet man and returned to normal 5-year-old worries like whether mermaids were real and when she could get a pet rabbit. But she did develop one lasting habit that we still practice now, over a year later. Every single night before bed, Harper and I check her closet together. We open the door wide, look inside carefully, confirm that it's just my clothes and shoes. Mommy, nothing else, and then close it firmly. It's our ritual, our way of reclaiming that space and that sense of safety. My relationship with Todd actually improved after everything happened. He apologized for some of the harsh things he'd said, admit that anyone could have missed the signs, and acknowledged that homelessness and mental illness can turn people into versions of themselves they never intended to become. We developed a better co-parenting rhythm, united by the shared goal of keeping Harper safe and helping her heal. The most important lesson I learned is about the difference between strength and stubbornness. Real strength isn't refusing to ask for help or ignoring your own instincts to prove you can handle everything alone. Real strength is trusting yourself when something feels wrong, reaching out when you need support, and accepting that you can't control everything, no matter how hard you try. I also learned to listen to Harper. When children tell you something is wrong, even if it sounds impossible or imaginary, there's usually a reason they're saying it. Dismissing her stories about the quiet man as imagination had put us both in serious danger. Now, when she tells me something that seems unlikely, I take the time to investigate rather than immediately explaining it away. I think about that midnight phone call all the time. Harper's giggling voice saying, "The man in my closet says hi," like it was completely normal. How I thought for those first few seconds that she was just playing pretend, testing boundaries, being silly. How close we came to something far worse than what actually happened. What if Marcus's mental illness had manifested as violence instead of fear? What if he'd hurt Harper when she discovered him? What if she'd tried to keep his presence a secret more actively, and he'd manipulated her into helping him? The what-ifs still wake me up some nights, my heart racing, checking the security system app on my phone to make sure all the sensors show green, all the doors and windows secure. But I also think about the broader failure that led to Marcus being in my attic in the first place. A man with a good job and a stable life brought down by mental illness with no adequate safety net to catch him. Before he fell so far that living in a stranger's attic seemed like his only option. That's not just a personal tragedy. That's a systemic failure that affects thousands of people. I don't excuse what Marcus did. He violated our home, watched my daughter through a vent in the attic, took our food, and shattered our sense of safety. Those facts don't change, no matter how much I understand his desperation or his illness. But I also can't demonize him. He was a sick person making terrible choices, not an evil person choosing to do harm. And now he's getting treatment and support that might prevent him from ever getting that desperate again. 10 minutes was all it took from Harper's phone call to me opening that closet door and finding Marcus hiding behind the clothes. 10 minutes, where my world shifted from dismissing my daughter's imagination to confronting the reality that we'd been living with a stranger who'd been watching us for weeks. Those 10 minutes taught me that the most dangerous threats aren't always the ones we imagine. Sometimes they're the ones we refuse to believe are real because believing them would mean admitting we're not as in control as we thought we were. Harper is 7 now, thriving in 2nd grade, still occasionally mentioning the quiet man as that time when the sad man lived in our house, with the matter-of-fact tone children use for events they've processed and moved past. We live in a different house now, one that's newer with better security. Though I know that safety is as much about awareness as it is about locks and cameras. If this story gave you chills and made you think twice about those strange sounds in your house, please subscribe for more real stories about the unexpected dangers hiding in plain sight and the resilience it takes to recover from them. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, because I love connecting with you all. And if your child ever tells you about something or someone that seems imaginary, please take the time to really listen and investigate it. Might not be imagination at all. Trust your instincts, trust your children, and never convince yourself that something can't be happening just because it seems impossible. She was asking them to hurry, begging loudly. I couldn't wait for the police. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on, sweeping the beam across the ground around Theo's car quickly. That's when I saw it clearly. A trail of disturbed dirt and broken branches led from the road into the tree line. Someone had been dragged into woods, someone had struggled and left marks in earth. I ran toward the trees without even thinking. Darcy called after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop moving every second I wasted was a second. Theo might not have survived. I pushed through undergrowth, following the trail of broken branches and kicked up leaves. My flashlight beam bounced wildly ahead as I ran fast. Thorns scratched my arm's roots, tried to trip me. But I didn't care about any of it. I could hear something ahead, voices, movement, the sound of someone struggling. I pushed harder, running faster than I knew I could manage. My lungs were burning and my legs screaming for me to stop. I burst through thick cluster of bushes, stumbling into a small clearing. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Theo was on the ground. His hands were bound tightly behind his back with zip ties. His face was bloody from cut on his forehead. Badly, a man was standing over him, holding something that caught the moonlight and glinted sharply. A knife. The man was tall and broad, wearing dark clothes blending into the shadows. A van was parked on dirt path nearby, same van Theo had described seeing at the gas station. The man turned when he heard me crash through the bushes briefly. We just stared at each other. His face was rough, weathered, and his eyes cold, empty, like nothing human remained inside them. I didn't give him time to react. I charged at him with my flashlight raised like a weapon. I swung it hard as I could, feeling it connect with shoulder. The impact sent shock up my arm sharply, but I didn't stop. I swung again, hitting him in the face. He stumbled backward, falling to the ground quickly. Theo screamed at me, telling me to run, to get out immediately, to leave him alone and save myself, but I wasn't leaving without him. I dropped to my knees beside him and started pulling at the zip ties around his wrists. My fingers were shaking so badly. I couldn't get a grip on the plastic. The man was rising. Blood ran down his face from where I had hit him, but he kept moving, still coming toward us. I looked around desperately and saw a rock on the ground near my knee. I grabbed it and threw forcefully. It missed his head but hit his chest, and he stumbled again. Then I heard sound most beautiful in world. Sirens, faint at first, but growing louder quickly. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees from direction of Highway Darcy's 911 call. Worked help was coming finally. The man heard sirens too. He froze briefly, looking toward lights, calculating his next possible options. Then he turned, running into darkness, vanishing instantly. I didn't care about him anymore. All I cared about was Theo. I found sharp rock on ground used to saw through zip ties around his wrists quickly. The plastic snapped free and his hands came free. He grabbed me, holding on like never letting go. He was crying, I was crying, we were shaking and bloody, and terrified together. The police found us in that clearing minutes later. They followed Broken Branch's trail just like I had done already. They called ambulance, wrapped blankets around our shoulders. They asked questions I could barely answer. Voice kept breaking. Theo was alive. He was hurt and traumatized, but alive. I had found him in time, and in that moment nothing else in world mattered. Police caught the man 2 days later. Vincent Clay, 41 years old, history of violent crimes stretching nearly 20 years across 3 different states, served time twice already for assault and kidnapping, but kept getting released. He kept finding new hunting grounds, constantly looking for new victims. The detectives told me Vincent targeted young men. On highways for months, he waited at isolated gas stations late at night, watching college students, young travelers driving alone, easy targets who wouldn't be noticed. Theo was exactly the type these monsters hunted, young, alone, driving through remote areas late night. He looked tired, distracted, stopped for gas, probably didn't notice van shadows or person watching silently. He had no idea he was being hunted until it was too late. The thought sickened me, but also made me drive faster, knowing he was still out there and I would find them before they finished. What started Theo wasn't first victim evidence found buried woods. Things I cannot describe proved Vincent brought others to that clearing before police told me if I hadn't arrived. When I did, Theo would be another unmarked grave in those woods. Another missing person never found. I try not think. Imagine what happened if I had listened. Darcy stayed home, waited police instead. I drove 3 hours into darkness, racing toward him without hesitation. Theo spent 2 days hospital. He had concussion, bruised ribs, and cuts on face and wrists from zip ties injuries. Healed within weeks. Physically, other wounds lasted longer. Nightmares every night, months waking, screaming, convinced someone was in room. He couldn't drive night asterisk, even sitting in a car after dark made him panic badly. The sound of gravel crunching under tires or headlights appearing suddenly in a mirror would send him spiraling into a full anxiety attack. He started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma. He went to sessions twice weekly and slowly learned how to manage fear inside him. It wasn't easy. There was no magic moment where everything improved. It was slow, painful, and full of setbacks. But he kept going, kept fighting. That's who Theo is. That's who he has always been. He took rest semester off from school completely. There was no way he could focus anymore. When he was ready to return, he transferred to college in Columbus so he could stay close to me permanently. We got an apartment together near my campus. Darcy moved in with her boyfriend, Theo. Took her old room. Finally, it felt right having him nearby. It felt safe. Our mom flew in the day after the attack. I hadn't seen her cry like that since our divorce. She held both of us for hours straight, apologizing over and over for not being there when we were kids, for making me care for Theo while teenager. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was still angry about those years, probably. Always will be part of me seeing her there. Terrified, broken, realizing holding on to anger wasn't helping anyone. She made mistakes, big ones, but she was still our mother, and she was trying to improve. That had to count for something. Theo and I are closer now than we have ever been. We eat dinner together almost every night. We watch terrible movies on weekends, argue which ones are worst. He tells me about classes and new friends he's making. I tell him about nursing school patients I meet. During clinical rotations, we talk about everything, nothing like siblings are supposed to. Sometimes late at night, apartment quiet. Theo asleep in his room. I think about that FaceTime call, fear on his face, remembering watching the hand reach from darkness, grab him. I think about how close I came, losing most important person life. People tell me brave for driving out alone. They call me hero for running into woods with nothing but flashlight. But I don't feel like hero, just sister who did. What necessary Theo needed me always. Ever since we were kids, surviving parents, broken marriage together, I wouldn't let him down. Not then. Not ever. If one thing learned that night, you can't wait someone else save people loved you can't assume. Help will arrive in time. Sometimes you must run toward danger instead of away. Sometimes only thing standing between someone loved and worst moment life is you. Theo asked me why didn't wait for police. Why risk life driving middle nowhere middle? Night I told truth, told him never choice to make. He's my brother. He's family. Family doesn't wait roadside while someone they love is in danger. That's what love really means. Not just saying care about someone. Actually showing up when they need. Most, even when scary dangerous, even when everyone warns. Stay behind, let someone else handle it. Real love gets in car drives 3 hours darkness. Because that's where a person, someone in life would do same, hold on them. And if someone you love ever calls middle night terrified and alone, don't ignore, don't assume it's nothing. Answer phone, listen carefully what they're telling, and if you have to drive because sometimes only one who can help. If this story meant something to you, drop comment. Tell me about someone in life would drive through darkness for you. Subscribe this channel. Don't miss more stories like this. Share with someone always been there. You no matter what they deserve to know how much they truly matter.